A Fish Called Wanda is a 1988 heist comedy film written by John Cleese and Charles Crichton. It was directed by Crichton and stars Cleese, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline, and Michael Palin. Kline won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance as Otto. Bull Durham is a 1988 American romantic comedy sports film. It is partly based upon the minor league experiences of writer, director Ron Shelton and depicts the players and fans of the Durham Bulls, a minor league baseball team in Durham, North Carolina. The Last Emperor is a 1987 biographical film about the life of Pu Ai, the last emperor of China, whose autobiography was the basis for the screenplay written by Mark Peplow and Bernardo Bertolucci. Independently produced by Jeremy Thomas, it was directed by Bertolucci and released in 1987 by Columbia Pictures. Full Metal Jacket is a 1987 war film directed and produced by Stanley Kubrick. The screenplay by Kubrick, Michael Herr, and Gustav Hasford was based on Hasford's novel The Short-Timers. The film stars Matthew Modine, Adam Baldwin, Vincent D'Onofrio. A Room with a View is a British romance drama film directed by James Ivory and produced by Ismail Merchant of E.M. Forster's 1908 novel of the same name. The film follows closely the novel by use of the chapter titles to section the film into thematic segments. Platoon is a 1986 American war film written and directed by Oliver Stone and starring Tom Berenger, Willem Dafoe and Charlie Sheen. It is the first film of a trilogy of Vietnam War films by Stone. Stone wrote the story based upon his experiences as a U. Hannah and Her Sisters is a 1986 American comedy drama film which tells the intertwined stories of an extended family over 2 years that begins and ends with a family Thanksgiving dinner. The film was written and directed by Woody Allen, who stars along with Mia Farrow as Hannah, Michael Caine as her husband, and Barbara Hershey and Diane Wyeth as her sisters. Blue Velvet is a 1986 American mystery thriller film, written and directed by David Lynch. The film stars Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, Dennis Hopper and Laura Dern. The title is taken from the Clovers' 1955 song of the same name. Brazil is a 1985 British film directed by Terry Gilliam and written by Gilliam, Charles McEwan, and Tom Stoppard. British National Cinema by Sarah Street describes the film as a fantasy, satire on bureaucratic society, while John Scalzi's Rough Guide to Sci-Fi Movies describes it as a dystopian satire. This is Spinal Tap is an American 1984 rock music mockumentary written, scored by, and starring Rob Reiner, Christopher Guest, Michael McKean and Harry Shearer. The film portrays the fictional British heavy metal band Spinal Tap. The Terminator is a 1984 American science fiction, horror action film directed by James Cameron, written by Cameron and the film's producer Gail Ann Hurd, and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Biehn, and Linda Hamilton. Amadeus, Director's Cut is a 1984 biography drama film written by Peter Shaffer and directed by Milos Forman. Koyaanisqatsi, also known as Koyaanisqatsi, Life Out of Balance, is a 1982 film directed by Godfrey Reggio with music composed by Philip Glass and cinematography by Ron Frick. The film consists primarily of slow motion and time-lapse footage of cities and many natural landscapes across the United States. The King of Comedy is an American black comedy film starring Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. Directed by Martin Scorsese and written by Paul D. Zimmerman, the film focuses on themes including celebrity worship and American media culture. Tootsie is a 1982 American comedy drama film that tells the story of a talented but volatile actor whose reputation for being difficult forces him to adopt a new identity as a woman to land a job. The movie stars Dustin Hoffman, with a supporting cast that includes Jessica Lange, Terry Geyer, Dabney Coleman, Charles Durning, Gina Davis, Bill Murray, Doris Bellack and producer, director Sidney Pollack. Mad Max 2 is a 1981 Australian post-apocalyptic action film directed by George Miller. The film is the second installment in the Mad Max film series, with Mel Gibson starring as Max Rocketansky. The film's tale of a community of settlers moved to defend themselves against a roving band of marauders follows an archetypical Western frontier movie motif, as does Max's role as a hardened man who rediscovers his humanity when he decides to help the settlers. Poltergeist is a 1982 American supernatural thriller film, directed by Tobe Hooper and co-written and produced by Steven Spielberg. It is the first and most successful entry in the Poltergeist film series. E.T. the Extraterrestrial is a 1982 American science fiction family film co-produced and directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Melissa Matheson, featuring special effects by Carlo Rambaldi and Dennis Muren, and starring Henry Thomas, Dee Wallace, Robert McNaughton, Drew Barrymore and Peter Coyote. Blade Runner is a 1982 American neo-noir dystopian science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott and starring Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, and Edward James Olmos. The screenplay, written by Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, is a modified film adaptation of the 1968 novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? By Philip K. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a 1981 American adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg. The screenplay by Lawrence Kasdan was from a story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. It was produced by Frank Marshall for Lucasfilm Limited. Atlantic City is a 1980 French-Canadian romantic crime film directed by Louis Malle. Filmed in late 1979, it was released in France and Germany in 1980 and in the United States in 1981. The script was written by John Gare. The Shining is a 1980 British-American psychological horror film produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick, co-written with novelist Diane Johnson, and starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Danny Lloyd, and Scatman Crothers. Raging Bull is a 1980 American biographical black and white sports drama film directed by Martin Scorsese, produced by Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler and adapted by Paul Schrader and Mardik Martin from Jake LaMotta's memoir Raging Bull, My Story. The Empire Strikes Back is a 1980 American epic space opera film directed by Irvin Kershner. Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan wrote the screenplay, with George Lucas writing the film's story and serving as executive producer. Airplane is a 1980 American satirical disaster comedy film directed and written by David Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry Zucker and released by Paramount Pictures. It stars Robert Hayes and Julie Hagerty and features Leslie Nielsen, Robert Stack, Lloyd Bridges, Peter Graves, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Lorna Patterson.